Hi guys, welcome to science today. Today we are on lesson 10.1 of how does water shape our world, and we are going to be looking at factors that affect erosion, weathering, and deposition. So our question is, what affects the rate of weathering, erosion, and deposition? So before we start, this is a question I would like you to look at and think about and try to answer. What factors do you think affect the amount of erosion, weathering, and deposition that occurs in land? So what things might be affecting how much the land erodes? We did look at that briefly in our reading 9.1. So think back to that. What caused erosion to speed up? What caused erosion to slow down? What could affect weathering? How fast those materials break apart? And what can affect deposition? How quickly or how slowly something gets deposited to a new location. So those are the things that we are going to talk about today in our lesson. You will find out. So this is a little chart that I thought was pretty useful. I don't know where to put my picture so you guys can see the whole thing. There we go. So I'd like you to copy this down somewhere in your workbook, maybe in one of your driving question note pages. If you still have some space there, write this down in here because I thought it broke this up pretty well in like a visual way that you guys could see. So we have rocks and minerals, and then weathering occurs, and that's when sediment is created, sediment production. And then erosion occurs. That's when sediment is transported. Transported means it's moved, right? And then we have deposition, which means sediment is deposited. So it's put in a new place. So with weathering, this is the decomposition of rocks and minerals by weathering processes. And the landforms that get created by weathering are soils, sands, karst caves, and talus cones. And then here's erosion. Erosion of sediment happens by wind, water, and ice, remember. And then the landforms that get formed are rivers, glacial valleys, canyons, U-shaped valleys, sandstone arches, sea stacks, and then deposition, that depositing of the sediment in a new place happens through wind, water, and ice. And things that get formed because of deposition are sandbars, alluvial fans, floodplains, and deltas. So go ahead and copy this chart into your workbook. This will be helpful for you to have as a reference to look back at. When you're done, just go ahead and unpause the video. All right, so these are just some pictures. So these are some landforms, and I know we've looked at these already briefly. I just wanted to remind you because we threw out those words there, and you might be going, what did those look like? So weathering creates these sorts of landforms. So we have sand and karst caves and soil and talus cones. Okay, so that's what you could put a picture with those words. And then erosion creates things like glacial valleys, this valley down here, rivers, U-shaped valleys, sandstone arches. All of these kind of landforms are created by the moving of that sediment, the erosion. And then deposition creates things like sandbars. This is really cool, right? It deposited that sand so much in one place here that it built up into this like little almost mini island there. Alluvial fans, when it came down, look how it got deposited there. It kind of looks like a fan shape. Floodplains, you can see the water, in the middle, but the stuff that's been deposited on the outsides and stuff there. And then this one is a delta. Now the delta is where the river kind of goes into the lake or the ocean, and all the sand and stuff that it's been carrying kind of stops there forms the delta of the river. All right, so today we're really focusing, that was kind of a review that we just did, focusing on the factors that affect the rate of weathering. So what can speed up or slow down how fast a rock gets broken down into sediment? So the number one thing I want you to put on your list is climate. Okay, so the amount of water in the air and the temperature. We know the amount of water in the air is humidity, right? And then temperature also affects how fast things weather. Weathering actually occurs fastest in hot, wet climates. So we would be a hot, dry climate, right? But if you're in a hot, wet climate, that's where weathering happens the quickest. It occurs very slowly in places like where we are, hot, dry climates, and also cold, dry climates. Okay. The number two thing, so you don't have to copy all the bullets, but just make sure you write down these factors. So climate, number one. Number two, surface area of exposed rock. So what does that mean? It means the more surface area there is, the more quickly it's going to weather. There's more space, right? That will get weathered faster. Smaller pieces of rock will weather faster than a larger block of rock. Okay. And then number three, the type of rock. So we're going to get into studying specific types of rocks coming up pretty soon. But some rocks and minerals actually resist weathering better than others. Okay, for example, quartz. It's a pretty hard one to weather. But we will go through all the different types of rocks, but just know that type of rock also affects how fast or how slow that rock breaks down. And then number four is pollution. Pollution causes weathering to speed up. So the more we pollute and we have excess carbon dioxide and other gases, we create acid rain, and then acid rain actually causes the rocks to dissolve faster. So we as humans are speeding up the rate of weathering with these pollutants. Okay, so make sure you have these four things: factors that affect weathering, climate, surface area of exposed rock, type of rock, and pollution. There are also some factors that affect erosion. Remember, erosion is the movement of that sediment. So once the rock is broken down, how it is being moved. Climate, again, affects this. The amount of rainfall. If you have more rainfall, you're going to have more movement, right? So if you have less rainfall, you'll have less movement. Wind speed. Higher winds are going to move things faster than slower winds. A temperature can affect erosion rate, snow melt, flooding, okay? All of these factors can affect how fast the sediment gets moved on out of there, eroded. Another thing is vegetation, and we talked about that when we learned about landslides, but if we have more vegetation, those roots grab on to that soil, causes it to erode more slowly. When we remove the plants, remove the trees, we don't have those roots holding the soil, that actually increases the rate of erosion. Number three is the slope of land. If it's more sloped, it's going to be faster than if it's slightly sloped, right? So the length, the height, and the shape of the slope. As slope increases in height, erosion increases as well. The number four thing is water flow, the transporting speed and power of the water source. And the faster the river, the quicker the erosion, which probably makes sense. If it's moving faster, it's going to be moving the sediment faster as well. We saw that in the stream table. When I poured more water and it started moving faster, that sand started coming down faster into that bucket, right? And finally, soil type. Sandy soils, they erode and they settle quickly. Compacted soils like clay erode slower and take longer to settle. And that makes sense even with what we learned with infiltration, right? That clay was harder to get the water through. So if it's harder to get the water through, it's not going to move it as quickly as the real sandy stuff that we had at the top. The water went through it very quickly, and that can move that away very quickly as well. All right, and finally, the factors that affect the rate of deposition. Number one is particle size. Okay, smaller particles settle more slowly than the larger particles because they're going to keep moving. Smaller ones are going to keep moving longer, right? They're not going to really stop as easily. But the bigger ones, it's going to be harder to move them, so they're not going to travel as far, and they're going to get deposited more quickly in a spot. Number two is particle shape. A round rock compared to a flat rock of the same size will settle faster in a body of water. So round rocks, they're just not going to go as far in water as a flat rock, right? Water speed. And these are just little examples on the bullets, guys. Other things in these categories apply as well. So water speed. The slower the movement of the water, the easier the sediment is deposited. So that makes sense, right? If the water's going slower, then deposition's going to happen faster. That stuff's going to stop moving. If the water slows down, then it reaches the flatter land, right? Because we know that when things are flat, they don't get pulled by gravity as much as when they're sloped. All right, and then wind speed. The slower the movement of the wind, the harder it is for the air to continue to carry sediment. So deposition will happen quicker if it is less windy, which makes sense. So I hope that all of those factors made sense to you. You can go back and review as you do your Google form as you need to. So your assignment today is to do the Google form 10.1 Earth Science. It's factors affecting weathering, erosion, and deposition.